The sound of glass shattering echoed across the restaurant as crimson wine splashed across the marble floor. My heart skipped a beat as Jessica Patterson's perfectly manicured hand twisted into the fabric of my uniform, yanking it with such force that the seams gave way. "You pathetic little waitress," she spat, her voice sharp enough to slice through the hushed whispers of the diners watching nearby. "I'll make sure you never work again." Her voice rang with cruelty, dripping with venomous satisfaction as my torn blouse exposed me to the room. A ripple of gasps swept through the restaurant. Customers froze, forks suspended in midair, shocked at the scene unfolding before them. But what Jessica didn't know, what no one at that moment knew, was that the security cameras overhead had been capturing every second. And my husband, billionaire Daniel Stone, was watching it all from the private office upstairs. And Jessica, she had her own secret, one so dark it would soon unravel before the entire world. What happened that night would change not only her life, but mine, and the lives of everyone who worked in our restaurant, forever. My name is Christina Stone, and just 3 months before this incident, my life had seemed like a dream. I was a proud owner of the Golden Palm, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Celebrities dined at our tables, journalists praised our cuisine, and million-dollar business deals were sealed over candlelit dinners under our chandeliers. I had built the restaurant from scratch with my husband's support. Daniel, a brilliant tech entrepreneur, had believed in my dream from day one. He didn't just bankroll my vision. He respected it, encouraged it, and trusted me to run it. Together, we had created more than a business. We had created a legacy. But perfection has a way of luring shadows. The first sign came in the form of an anonymous letter slipped under my office door. I'll never forget the neat handwriting, precise and chilling. "Your staff is suffering, and you don't even care. Some of your customers are monsters, and you're letting it happen. If you don't fix this, I will." I tried to brush it off as the rant of a disgruntled ex-employee or a prank. But then came the second letter, and then the third, each one more specific. Each one accusing me of ignoring harassment, intimidation, and even threats happening under my own roof. I was stunned. I asked my managers if any of these incidents were true, but they shrugged, dismissing it. "Everything's fine," said Carlos, my head of operations. "Customer complaints are lower than ever." But something in my gut screamed that wasn't true. And so I made a decision that would change everything. I decided to go undercover. When I told Daniel, he nearly choked on his coffee. "You're the owner of a multi-million-dollar restaurant. Christina, why would you pretend to be a waitress?" But I couldn't let it go. If my employees were suffering and hiding it, if my customers were truly monsters behind a veil of fine dining, I needed to see it with my own eyes. No manager's report would ever show me the truth. So I became Kate Morrison, a struggling college student waitressing to pay tuition. I dyed my hair a dull brown, swapped my contact lenses for a different color, and filled my closet with cheap second-hand clothes. I even practiced balancing trays until my arms ached. When I finally walked through the back door of my own restaurant as Kate, no one recognized me. Not my staff, not the chefs I greeted every morning, not even Maria, the veteran waitress I trusted the most. And what I discovered shook me to my core. The first week opened my eyes to the truth of restaurant work. My feet throbbed after 10-hour shifts, my wrists ached from carrying trays, and the fake smile plastered on my face sometimes felt unbearable. Most customers were polite, yes, but others treated me like furniture, or worse, like a punching bag for their frustrations. I endured finger snaps, insults, and endless nitpicking. And yet, still, I hadn't uncovered the full depth of cruelty hinted at in those letters. Not until Jessica Patterson walked in. I remember the night vividly. It was a Thursday evening, and the Golden Palm was buzzing with its usual symphony of clinking glasses, hushed conversations, and the soft music of the pianist in the corner. Then Jessica entered, and it was as if the room tilted to make space for her ego. Her red silk dress shimmered under the lights, clinging to her like molten fire. Diamonds glittered on her ears and wrists, each piece of jewelry deliberately chosen to scream, "I am untouchable." Her blonde hair was a cascade of waves, styled to perfection, and her eyes, sharp, calculating, cruel. She was flanked by 3 women who orbited her like satellites, laughing at every snide comment, echoing every insult she threw into the air. From the moment she sat down, she treated the restaurant like her personal stage, and we, the staff, were unwilling actors in her performance. When I approached her table, notepad ready, she studied me like I was a puzzle. "You're new," she said, her voice as smooth as silk, but carrying a razor's edge. "Yes, ma'am," I replied, adopting the humble tone I had practiced. "Just started recently." "Where did you work before this?" she pressed, ignoring the menu. Her friends leaned in, curious. I recited my backstory about being a college student scraping together tuition, but something in her expression told me she didn't quite buy it. That was the beginning. From that night on, Jessica made my life hell. She requested my section every time she visited, demanding that only Kate serve her. She sent dishes back 3 for times, inventing flaws. She snapped her fingers at me, called me clumsy, and mocked my appearance. But it wasn't just cruelty, it was calculation. She was testing me, watching how far she could push before I snapped. "Stay away from her," Maria whispered one night as we polished glasses. "Jessica's driven out at least 3 waitresses. They quit because of her. She makes sport of breaking people." When I asked why management hadn't stepped in, Maria sighed. "She spends too much money here. The higher-ups won't risk it." And then I remembered the letters. Jessica wasn't just a nightmare customer. She was a storm those letters had warned me about. But I didn't yet realize just how dangerous she truly was. The final straw came on her 4th week of torment. Jessica strutted into the restaurant in another designer gown, lips painted blood red. That night, she wasn't here just to belittle. She was here to destroy. When I set down her glass of vintage wine, she deliberately tilted her wrist and sent it crashing to the ground. The stem shattered, wine blooming across the marble like spilled blood. "You clumsy idiot!" she shrieked, standing abruptly. The restaurant went silent. "Look at what you've done. This dress costs more than you'll ever make in your miserable life." Her voice rose higher, drawing every pair of eyes in the room. The humiliation was deliberate. She wanted me broken. I tried to keep calm. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Let me get the manager." But she cut me off with a snarl. "Don't you dare. You'll pay for this. I'll make sure you're fired tonight." And then she grabbed my blouse and ripped it. The sound of tearing fabric was deafening. My uniform hung in tatters. I stood frozen, my dignity stripped in front of dozens of people. But I wasn't the only one watching. From upstairs, Daniel had seen everything on the cameras, and now he was on his way down. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every guest in the restaurant stared as Jessica stood over me, her diamond-studded hand clutching the torn fabric of my blouse like a trophy. Her friends smirked behind their wine glasses, clearly entertained by her cruelty. I felt a heat rising in my chest, not shame, not even anger. Something else. Something that whispered, "This ends tonight." But before I could speak, a familiar voice thundered across the dining hall. "Enough." The room seemed to part like water as Daniel Stone, my husband, the billionaire who built half the skyline of the city, strode forward. He was tall, commanding, every eye magnetized by his presence. He wore no tie, his suit jacket unbuttoned, but his authority was undeniable. "Daniel." Jessica blinked in shock, her grip loosening on my blouse. "What are you?" He didn't even glance at her. His eyes were locked on me, filled with both fury and something softer, protectiveness. He reached out, gently draping his suit jacket over my shoulders to cover the torn uniform. "You're shaking," he murmured. "Are you all right?" That tenderness in front of everyone made tears sting my eyes. I nodded, unable to speak. Then he turned, and when his gaze shifted to Jessica, the temperature of the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You just humiliated my wife." The words hit like a hammer. Gasps erupted. Forks clattered against plates. Jessica's mouth opened and closed, her painted lips trembling. "Wife." Daniel stepped closer, his voice low but lethal. "You ripped the dress of Christina Stone, co-owner of the Golden Palm. My wife, the woman you just mocked, abused, and degraded in front of half the city's elite." Her friends paled, exchanging frantic looks. One of them whispered, "She's the owner?" before sinking into her seat. Jessica, however, tried to recover. She tossed her hair back, her smirk trembling but still present. "This is ridiculous." She said her name was Kate. She lied. Because she was undercover, Daniel cut in, his tone icy. "Investigating toxic customers who terrorize staff. Customers like you." He snapped his fingers. Two suited men, our private security, appeared at his side. And then he added, his voice booming so all could hear, "And you are now permanently banned from every Stone-owned property. That includes this restaurant, our hotels, our clubs, and every venue we hold shares in." A stunned silence followed. But Daniel wasn't finished. "Jessica Patterson," he continued, pulling a folded document from his pocket. "We've also discovered something else. You've been writing fake reviews, bribing influencers, and spreading lies about rival businesses to force them into bankruptcy." My heart skipped. So that's why the anonymous letters kept mentioning cruelty beyond the restaurant walls. Jessica froze, her face draining of color. "That's absurd. You can't prove." Daniel raised a brow. "We already have, and the authorities will be very interested in the evidence we've compiled." Gasps swept the room again. The pianist in the corner had stopped playing, his hands frozen above the keys. Even the chandeliers seemed to flicker under the weight of the revelation. Jessica's mask of confidence cracked, revealing panic underneath. Her friends shifted uncomfortably, clearly ready to distance themselves from her sinking ship. "You can't do this," she screeched, desperation dripping from every syllable. "Do you know who my father is?" "Yes," Daniel said evenly. "And I know he won't protect you from fraud charges or from assaulting my wife." That was a final blow. Security stepped forward. Jessica tried to resist, but her friend shrank away from her, unwilling to be dragged down too. As the guards escorted her out, her voice echoed through the hall. "This isn't over. You'll regret humiliating me like this." But the threat fell flat. No one believed her anymore. When the doors closed behind her, silence hung heavy. Then, slowly, the diners began to clap. First a few, then dozens, until the room erupted in applause. Not for Daniel, not even for me, but for the justice of it all, for the truth finally revealed. Daniel turned back to me, his eyes softening. He reached out, tucking a stray strand of hair behind my ear. "Are you sure you want to keep doing this?" he asked gently. I took a deep breath, looking around the room at my staff. Maria wiping tears from her eyes, the young busboy smiling in relief, the chefs peeking out from the kitchen. "Yes," I said firmly, "because they deserve better. And tonight proved why I had to see it with my own eyes." He kissed my forehead. "Then we'll make it better. Together." In the weeks that followed, Jessica's empire of lies crumbled. The police opened an investigation into her fraudulent schemes, and those she had targeted came forward with stories of ruin and harassment. The Patterson name, once associated with luxury and influence, became synonymous with disgrace. Meanwhile, the Golden Palm thrived. Customers respected the staff more, knowing the owners had their backs. The employees carried themselves with newfound pride, no longer afraid of customers like Jessica. And me? I no longer needed to hide behind the disguise of Kate, but I didn't abandon the uniform entirely. Some nights, I still tied on that apron and walked the floor, not as an undercover investigator, but as a reminder of where I came from, a reminder of the dignity in service. Because at the end of the day, being a waitress had taught me something no billionaire lifestyle ever could. The true measure of a person isn't in their wealth, their titles, or their status. It's in how they treat those who can do nothing for them. And Jessica Patterson had failed that test spectacularly. But me? I would never forget it.